New updates are ready to install. On a computer, that's easy. With a click of a mouse, you can update and restart. With a global economy, it's not that simple, but it's happening, and each of us must be prepared. It's that time again, time to tune out the hype and focus on the facts. Of course, facts that matter to you, the income generation. Let's get started. Get ready to separate reality from myth.
Joining me right now is Sound Income Strategies founder and CEO David Scranton.
They've created a new type of inflation. And although markets have always been an emotional place, they seem to be even more of an emotional place these days.
Jeffrey Small, market watcher, is with me.
Stock market dynamic is getting ready to significantly change.
So let's bring in our co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, and also the brand ambassador for the Retirement Income Store. As this coronavirus crisis has continued, we've done several shows about the new normal taking shape in the worlds of business, education, healthcare, as well as our society at large. We'll revisit these issues today and update you on new developments taking place and how they could impact your financial future. Joining me will be, as usual, my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, along with our guest, Bob Zukis, co-author of the new bestseller, The Great Reboot. We'll also be talking to Anthony Saccaro, president of Providence Financial, a retirement income store located right outside of LA. Anthony has a new book coming out soon, and I'm sure he's going to give us the details. In addition, we'll review how and why this great reboot creates a potential need for you to reboot your own retirement plan and how to go about it. But before we get to our first guest, let's review just where this great reboot is having some of its biggest impacts to our everyday lives. Reopening the economy isn't only about restarting businesses exactly as they were. Every business needs to be relevant to the post-pandemic world. They need to be reopened and reborn into the strategic risks they now face and the new wants and needs they'll now need to serve. That's a quote from The Great Reboot, co-authored by today's guest, Bob Zukis. It underscores the fact that businesses need to adapt to survive. But just what are some of the new wants and needs that businesses will have to serve in this post-pandemic world? Well, we've seen many of them taking shape over the last few months. One of the biggest has to do with how and where we spend our money and the huge shift toward digital consumerism. This shift was already underway before the pandemic, but it sped up dramatically once brick and mortar stores were forced to close and their customers were forced to stay at home. Customers, like me, who'd never shopped online before, now had no choice. Many actually learned to like it and by now have gotten used to it. Consequently, many iconic retailers have still relied heavily on in-store sales and they filed for bankruptcy during the pandemic. But others that were prepared for a digital surge or quickly able to adapt have remained strong. And I believe this illustrates how a great economic reboot is very much a double-edged sword. It creates new risks and new dangers, yes, but also creates new opportunities. It also advances technology and innovation. Why? Because again, new things must emerge to meet the changing wants and needs of society. Another area we've seen this clearly is in education. Throughout the pandemic, teachers have continually found new ways to keep students virtually engaged. As a result, communications technology is advancing. It's advancing to suit their needs, along with other teaching tools and strategies. These same advances are also responding to changing wants and needs in the business world, where more and more actual business is being conducted. And it's being done now, it seems, online, more so than ever before, and more employees are working from home. The rise in telehealth and in virtual doctor's visits is another major change accelerated by the pandemic. And of course, many people are now conducting more of their social lives online, and that trend is likely to continue. What does it all mean for businesses looking to remain relevant? And what might it mean for your retirement plan? We'll talk about that coming up in just a bit. And right now, it's time to welcome my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, a retirement income store located in Melbourne, Florida. He's also our very own brand ambassador for the Retirement Income Store and Amazon best-selling author of the book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. We also want to welcome a new friend of the income generation, first timer on the show, Bob Zukis, co-author of The Great Reboot, Succeeding in a World of Catastrophic Risk and Opportunity, a post-pandemic guide for business leaders. Bob, so good to have you here on the show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So tell me, when during this whole COVID-19 crisis did you decide to write the book, and ultimately, what was your main objective of writing this?
Yeah, we actually put our first table of contents together on February 28th. So very early in this process. And what really motivated us, we were talking to the marketplace and business leaders about these issues, but what we were all living through with COVID was a bit of a common denominator that we thought we could use as a learning moment for everyone. So we really wanted to tell that story, but more broadly, tell the story about systemic change coming out of the back of the pandemic.
So talk to us about that systemic change, because I know it's an overriding theme to the book. Give us the overview, if you will.
Yeah, well, let's first talk about a system. So systems are really nothing more than parts that are interrelated, that serve a common purpose. And what's happened is we've created a lot of very complex systems in the world that we live in. So understanding how those systems function and how they serve that purpose is really what the objective behind systemic risk is all about. And as we saw with COVID in the healthcare system, a very complicated healthcare system, we started to see points of failure within that system that then cascaded into economic systems, business systems, social systems. And the good news, the silver lining and all of that is when you have systemic failure, we have systemic change. So we have large scale change coming out of the back of the failure.
So that's very interesting, Bob, that you mentioned all of that, but that's kind of a real big, broad brush. Could you be more specific about the types of systemic failure? And are you talking about in the healthcare industry or in corporate America? What exactly are you referring to?
Yeah, both. So in healthcare, the experience we all lived through, there was a critical constraint on the number of ICU beds in North America. We only have 98,000 of them. So as the pandemic was unfolding, we saw that as a constraint that started to impose restrictions, potentially bringing the entire system to a standstill. And what happened is when we don't understand risk in complex systems, there are two options when the system starts to spiral out of control. You could ignore the risk, or you can shut down the system. We did both in North America, and the opportunity coming out of the back end is really understanding what happened, how it happened, and then getting better at understanding these issues. But when we shut down the system, it infected the consumer. So that then cascaded and affected businesses, shut down consumption, shut down social interactions, social behaviors, and had this cascading effect, which is the definition of systemic risk and systemic failure, a failure of a part within the system that then jeopardizes the entire system.
Yeah, but I don't think it was a failure in the system that precipitated this. It was a mandated stoppage and shutdown, which turned everybody's world upside down. But now it's looking like the 2020 event of the corona economy or the coronavirus is just going to be that, a 2020 event. And it's looking like we're getting ready to come out of this pretty strongly. I think that the real change, not just in the healthcare side of the equation, because that's really based on what happens in the pandemic, but in corporate America, we're seeing the digitization of a new economy occur as America turns to digitization. So why don't you expand a little bit on that, because that's really exciting and cutting edge type stuff.
Yeah, and that's actually the big winner in all of this is, the system that helped us get through this, the system that succeeded, that didn't fail, was really the digital system. And business leaders and, even consumers, this is what kept us connected, kept businesses connected with their markets, kept employees connected, was their digital business system. So I think this new realization of digital leading and transforming and its value in the world that we occupy is a new realization for a lot of people. And it's a bit of a wake-up call, but I'm totally with you. I think this forward-looking, digital transformation of the world has been something that we've been talking about for a long time. But I think this external shock, this outside in shock really changed that. I think it actually needed digital transformation to really give it some legs and to really elevate it to where it needed to be.
So Bob, 30 seconds we have left in this block here. Simply put, from an investor's perspective, do you think that companies that have succeeded with that digital initiative are going to be the best companies for investors to bet on over the next year or two?
Yes, absolutely. And I think people are starting to recognize that, leading with digital value creation is a game changer economically. So the economic impacts that a lot of these technologies bring to organizations is what companies have woken up to and realized. And there's a new appreciation for the value creation opportunities of digital tools and engagement.
Great. And we need to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to ask Bob Zukis about some other things that as investors you need to focus on moving forward, other than just technology. So stay with us. We'll be back with much more right here on The Income Generation.
Diane and her husband dreamed of spending their retirement traveling, but that changed when she became her mother's primary caregiver. Now her day starts before 6 a.m., helping mom often late into the night. It's a stressful job, but Diane wants the best for her mom. Sound familiar? We thought so too. Caregiving can take a toll on your family, but the Retirement Income Store is here to help. Call 1-888-888-4176 to find out how the Retirement Income Store can help you achieve financial empowerment during retirement.
I'm David Scranton. During my career, I found that most baby boomers have done a great job growing their retirement savings, yet many don't know how to convert their savings into steady income. And that is why I built the Retirement Income Store, to help hardworking Americans preserve their assets and establish steady streams of income.
Call 866-710-1749 to receive your free retirement income kit with 5 educational tools and a no-obligation conversation with an income specialist. Call 866-710-1749. Online at theretirementincomestore.com.
David J. Scranton's groundbreaking new book, The Retirement Income Story, will revolutionize the way baby boomers and their advisors plan and save for retirement. The Retirement Income Story, the story behind the launch of the Retirement Income Store, is about to shatter many of the myths Wall Street bankers have promoted and protected for decades. David outlines what he believes to be a much better method for planning and saving for retirement, one that doesn't involve taking on more stock market risk. In fact, most will be able to reduce and or possibly even eliminate stock market risk while creating renewable streams of income they can count on well into their retirement years. The simple truth is that if you were born in 1968 or sooner, you can't afford to ride out another catastrophic stock market drop like the ones in 2000 and 2007. Read the Retirement Income Story and revolutionize the way you plan and save for retirement.
I'm David Scranton. As we reopen the economy, a renaissance has begun in the world of investing. If you or your advisor are not prepared for the new corona economy, you could be left behind. You don't have to cross your fingers and toes hoping for growth in this unpredictable stock market. There is a more conservative way, and that is to invest for income without all the stock market risk.
Call the Retirement Income Store today at 866-853-7209 for your free retirement income kit. Call 866-853-7209 now.
As we mentioned, advances in things like communications technology and automation typically speed up during times of great economic change and hardship. In fact, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, the pace of automation increased consistently during the last 3 recessions and will continue to do so during this one. For businesses to survive in the new corona economy, most will have to accept these accelerated shifts to more automation and e-commerce and to shift more money toward these efforts. For many, that may mean revisiting decisions that they have already made about future growth and possibly reimagining their entire business plan. In a similar way, other aspects of the Great Reboot mean that many individuals may need to revisit decisions that you've made about saving and investing and possibly reimagine your entire retirement plan, something we'll be talking about more coming up in the show. In addition to adapting to new consumer trends and new automation, businesses will also need to make changes to become more financially resilient. That means carrying less debt and making sure that they have enough cash reserves to weather the next big crisis. And for many, that'll mean rebalancing their priorities to make resiliency more central to the business strategy itself. And you can bet that big investors will be watching all these efforts and factoring their results into their own valuations. But just as the Great Reboot is a double-edged sword for consumers, it's also that for the business world. Again, even as it creates new risks and challenges, it also creates new advancements and opportunities. Already, many businesses have discovered faster, cheaper, and more efficient ways to operate and to meet the changing wants and needs of consumers. And ultimately, these changes could lead to a better management and a more tech-savvy workforce. It could also mean new job opportunities in areas where the Great Reboot is already creating increased demand. Programmers, communications technicians, software engineers, web designers. These are just a few of the job areas where demand is likely to continue rising in this new Corona economy. And for the workers with skills to fill that demand, it may mean a better paycheck and more job security, which of course benefits the entire economy. And just as the Great Reboot is a double-edged sword for businesses and society in general, it's also that for everyday investors. And we'll again be talking about that coming up in just a bit. Right now it's time to bring back my good friend and co-host Jeff Small, as well as our new friend of the income generation, Bob Zukis, co-author of The Great Reboot. So Bob, a lot of people right now are looking at the companies that really where the technology worked and it really saved our bacon in many ways through the shutdown. And those stocks have just soared. So, hindsight's 2020, and I know you feel like they're still going to be strong for investors moving forward as we've kind of gone through a bit of a secular change in how we do business. But looking at it today, what are some other areas that you think when you talk a lot about leadership and using the leadership of a company, the board is determining, which companies might be with it versus those that might get left behind. So give some words of wisdom, if you can, to our income generation members here, about what's next. What are some of the next areas or types of companies you think they should be looking forward that actually have some good upside potential other than just the big tech companies?
Yeah, well, there's the pure technology firms are the beneficiary, the early beneficiary. But then there's firms like Beyond Meat, and we talk about this in the book. So a secular change, a structural change in how we consume and process meat. The meat industry is a very large industry, a lot bigger than people give it credit for. But I think we're seeing one of the things I'm fascinated with is changes in behavior, permanent changes in behavior. So not the shock, not the short-term shock of what we've all gone through, but the long-term shift that's taking place. And we've never seen behavioral shifts of this magnitude before. So meat consumption, alternative food products, I think is another big secular sector that's not technology driven, it's innovation driven, that is going through a structural change.
I actually had my first Beyond Meat burger just about a month ago, and I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't know what it would taste like, and it was actually pretty good. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
The breakfast sausage is amazing.
Oh, is it really? Wow, that's great. Now, Jeff, I know you're not one to eat vegetables. You're more of a meat guy, a meat and potatoes guy. So I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Well, the Beyond Meat thing is kind of interesting. I think if you like cellulose in your diet, then have one of their patties or whatever. But that's not me. But anyway, I think the adoptions that you were talking about, Bob, in technology, and one of the most amazing things that I think we've witnessed so far since the advent of the COVID event in March is how many people are using teledoc and telemedicine now, and how many people are using Zoom. I mean, Zoom is now becoming almost a daily staple for folks, especially in the educational realm, because 80% of all classes are Zoomed in college now. It's crazy what's happening. And so I don't know if these, hands-on is better for a lot of stuff, especially in the educational realm, also in the corporate realm. But, do you expect this to continue if the virus is only what I would call a 2020 event, and we still have, the mitigation strategies in place to preclude the virus from expanding? But if it's only a 2020 event, are things like telemedicine and Zoom technologies going to be used in everybody's life on a daily basis?
I think that's a permanent shift, and I think that's one of the social behaviors. We were a society that was, ready to get up and go at the drop of a hat. A let's go kind of value proposition. Now I think it's more of a why go. So I think if, events, you have to have a good reason to get together and engage with folks. I think that's a permanent shift. This medium is, as an academic as well, is not a great learning mechanism. So I think there's some things that can't be replaced, but the value proposition of getting together needs to be much richer.
Yeah, it's funny. Even Tony Robbins, who's famous for stuffing 10,000 people in a room to walk on fire, is going all virtual now and all that stuff. Now, I'm not sure how he's going to do the fire walk when I'm sitting at home in a Zoom meeting, but I'm sure if anybody could find a way, he probably would. So are you optimistic then that next time we have a pandemic or a major issue like this, that business will be better prepared?
I'm optimistic for the next pandemic because history has shown us whenever we've had a major systemic failure, and we did in 2008 with the financial crisis, that was a systemic failure. We get better at understanding systemic risks and controlling them. I'm not optimistic with the failure that's going to come from a vector that we don't yet understand the system around climate, the grid, the electrical grid, the power grid, because we just haven't done a good enough job at understanding the complex world that we've created.
Mm-hmm. So 1 minute left. What are the final takeaways that you want our viewers and our listeners to really understand from the book? And also some words of advice for them, maybe, average folks over the age of 55, outside of the financial world, just good old life advice moving forward and what we've learned over the last 5 months.
Yeah, I'd say it's back to that point of understanding the difference between short-term shocks and long-term shifts. And if you're an investor, understanding how markets are moving and how that's impacting your investment is really where you want to focus your time and effort. And we're seeing significant shifts in markets, and that's obviously impacting the value of investments accordingly.
Yeah, and ultimately, look at technology as being your friend. As hard as it is sometimes for people who are, my age and older, including myself. I'm not a big technology fan. I always fight it. But if you make technology your friend, then potentially next time there's an issue like this, you could be ahead of the curve, and the change to your personal life, I think, would be a lot less shocking than it was for many this time.
Absolutely.
All right, Bob, thanks so much for being here with us. Time flies when you're having fun, and we enjoyed having you, so thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Bob.
The show is not over. We have a lot more to come right here. Jeff Small and David Scranton on The Income Generation. We'll be right back. I'm David Scranton. When it came time for my mom to retire, one simple mistake forced her to work years longer than she should have. And that's why I started the Retirement Income Store, to help hardworking Americans 55 and over plan for the retirement they deserve. I couldn't help my mom, but maybe I can help you.
Call 866-314-7227 to receive your free retirement income kit with 5 educational tools and a no-obligation conversation with an income specialist. Call 866-314-7227, online at theretirementinComeStore.com.
The Income Generation is now available on YouTube. Subscribe to The Income Generation so you never miss a show. You can watch all your favorite episodes now in one place, as well as catch up with your favorite financial guests. Subscribe now to The Income Generation, only on YouTube.
The same forces that are driving the Great Reboot among consumers, businesses, and society may also be driving a need to reboot, revamp, and restart your individual retirement plan. If you're a regular viewer, you know that a message I've shared frequently on the show since the start of the coronavirus crisis. And I'm sharing it again. Why? Because as a practicing financial advisor, I know firsthand that many investors have indeed discovered new risks and or opportunities in their portfolios as a result of this crisis. The right advisor can help you mitigate those risks, can help you take advantage of those opportunities and restart your retirement for this new corona economy, but only after you take the first step. And that involves revisiting your strategy to make sure the key decisions involved in it are still the right decisions, given how the financial markets have changed since February, as well as how your goals might have changed. We recently devoted an entire show to this process. So here's a recap of some of the major decisions that may have been affected. Number 1, when will you retire? It may now make sense to retire earlier or later than planned, depending upon goals and your personal situation. If you're employed in a field relatively unaffected by the crisis, you might not have to change anything at all. but it's still worth revisiting your decision and examining all those relevant factors just to be sure. Number 2, when to start collecting Social Security. As most people know, that's one of the most important decisions involved in retirement planning. And any number of issues related to the pandemic may have affected it. Inevitably, older workers might claim their Social Security benefits early as a result of job loss due to COVID-19. But even if you're not in that situation, remember your employment status is only one of many factors you need to consider when making that decision. Other factors include your age, your health, your marital status, financial markets, especially in the wake of this pandemic. And also, don't forget how your other assets are allocated affects your decision as to when and how to take Social Security, which brings us to the third key decision you'll want to revisit, your overall asset allocation. Is it still aligned with your goals and how those may have changed in recent months? Is it still capable of meeting your income needs for up to 30 years of retirement? Is it as safe as it should be against potential new risks and designed to help you take advantage of new opportunities? These are all great questions best answered with the help of the right advisor, meaning one who specializes in asset preservation and retirement income. And now let's bring back my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small. So Jeff, anything that Bob Zukis said surprise you?
I don't think so. I think Bob has a unique perspective from being a corporate American insider and being a big executive. I think he understands the fact that corporations have to evolve rapidly and that when economies are stopped and mandated by a virus, they have to transition and transform. And I think he's taken all of his knowledge and all of his experience and he's developed a viewpoint on what folks should expect in that regard. So I commend him for that.
Yeah, I'm surprised he tied the Beyond Meat thing to, the change that's happening because of the COVID-19 crisis. And I guess if I think about it, the only reason it makes sense is because there are a lot of people who, people are members of the income generation that go out to dinner. They get to a point where they go out to dinner 3, maybe 5 nights a week. And maybe now they've been forced to eat at home more. And maybe they've started to realize, eating at home isn't so bad. I get to eat healthier. Maybe I lost a couple pounds. I don't know. Maybe it's just that, that's the part of it that he's hoping will move forward, in which case it's not just Beyond Meat. In which case you've got to realize that restaurants are going to continue to struggle. Stock of the big restaurant chains are going to continue to struggle. But things that support, at-home cooking, at-home meal preparation, if my theory is correct, then could be, some of the places that might actually ultimately benefit from this crisis.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of positive residuals from the crisis, but I think he used the Beyond Meat topic as a trend or a shift as a result of the virus and people wanting to be healthier. But I got to tell you, Beyond Meat is not for me, Dave. I mean, I don't know what that is. I don't know what I'm eating if I eat it. I mean, you look at the ingredients and it's kind of hard to tell. It just says cellulose on there and a few other things. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
But I even think about fitness, right? So I think about, I don't know. I mean, I found that staying home and being trapped at home, so to speak, isn't as bad as I thought because, I've actually enjoyed eating at home. I personally have enjoyed the health aspects of it. The better control. In fact, I actually stopped eating meat in the middle of the COVID crisis. I literally, around March 8th or something, I think I watched the Netflix special Game Changers and said, well, if all these athletes could stop eating meat, so could I. But I've also found that even then, working out, I used to love going to the gym, and now buying some equipment at the house, it's kind of like, I love working out at my own house. I like that. I don't like the hassle of having to drive to the health club. I don't like the hassle of having to wait for a machine. So, I guess I'm wondering, am I the only weirdo, or, are these other trends that if our viewers, our listeners are smart, they can say, oh, these companies can move forward. I should be buying stock in something like Dick's Sporting Goods, perhaps, instead of buying stock in fitness companies, just like with restaurants.
Well, or buy the equipment makers that make the home exercising equipment. I mean, because you couldn't even get home exercising equipment when the pandemic hit because everybody was buying it. And so even before the virus, Dave, I mean, it was still going to a gym was not the healthiest thing for you. I mean, staff is around and they were always wiping down the machines and stuff. And then, of course, you're around everybody else's germs. And so it's not the healthiest thing to go to a gym, even though people like going to the gym because they get away from the inconsistencies of being at home and they can work at the gym and go through the routine. So it's much easier to get things done in those types of environments than it is to try and do everything at home. Just like it is for kids who aren't in school, they're Zooming. It's torture for them to sit there and be at their desk all day on Zoom while everybody else is in the class or the teacher is there monitoring them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's a new change. But I like that change in education, Jeff, because I think that, you know, kids have this thought that I go to school, I learn, I come home, I do sports, I do other stuff. My learning is in school. Hopefully now kids will start to get the idea that learning is a lifelong thing that you could do at home. And if that continues, if we've retrained how they think, then, you know, I think generations ahead, we might have people who are more lifelong learners. And that's a good thing.
You're exactly right about that. I was with some college kids this weekend, and they were complaining about how they need to be hands-on, and you know, now we're going to have to really work because now we have to Zoom. So self-starting is what that's going to teach them. You're right.
Yeah, and I also look at some of people's retirement goals, bringing it back to our viewers and our listeners and everything. When I look at some of their goals, a lot of them, you know, the number one goal when you say, what do you want to do when you retire? People say, well, we want to travel more, right? That's always the answer. But now traveling's taken a different form. As opposed to maybe going to Europe and being in hotels, it might be getting a Winnebago and enjoying some of the great things we have right here in the United States of America that we haven't seen. I've traveled a ton. I still haven't seen a lot of it. So that's another trend changing that I think when people are planning their retirement, even if they're in retirement, but also if they haven't retired, they need to think about how those goals have changed and how it's going to affect their income needs moving forward, I would think. Because for many, you know, they're going to get just as much enjoyment moving forward out of traveling more locally than, you know, necessarily going to Europe. Going to Europe sounds like it's got this great sexiness, but at the end of the day, we got some great stuff here, right?
We do have some great stuff here. America is, we have lots of great spaces here and lots of natural resources, a lot of cool places to see, but we're not even allowed to be in Europe. They don't like Americans right now. They've banned us, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's true now, and of course that'll open up again when you know things get better. But I mean, it could take a year and a half before we get this herd immunity and they feel comfortable. So I'll tell you what, we're 3 hours away from each other by car here in Florida. So I've got an idea for you. Let's go half and half on an RV. We won't take trips at the same time. You take it with your family, and then when you're not using it, I'll take it with my family. What do you think?
Sounds like a plan. An RV is just a boat with wheels.
There you go. You heard it right here on the Income Generation RV. Here we come. That's great. And I think I'm going to turn to Robert De Niro on Meet the Fockers, if you remember what he did in the RV. He was kind of militaristic. This could be fun, Jeff. All right, speaking of fun, stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. We have a great interview coming up with our good friend Anthony Saccaro. You're not going to want to miss. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Meet Bob. 10 years ago, he made the shift from investing for growth in the stock market to investing for income. Today, many of his friends are terrified to open their recent statements, but not Bob. Bob is enjoying his retirement, counting his interest and dividends. By investing for income, Bob was able to reduce his exposure to market risk and establish renewable streams of income for retirement. Sound familiar? If not, start with our free retirement income kit by calling 888-888-4176. The Retirement Income Store, where retirees go for income.
Now it's time to bring back in my co-host, Jeff Small, along with our very good friend and special guest, Anthony Saccaro. He's a lawyer, but we won't hold that against him. He's also president of Providence Financial, a retirement income store located just outside of LA. But Anthony is also the author of the upcoming brand new book, More Life Than Money, How to Not Outlive Your Savings. Anthony, love having you back on the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. Great to be back.
So, you know, you just heard this segment where Jeff and I are threatening to buy this RV together. And we'd love to have you in to split the RV three ways, except that he and I are 3 hours away from each other by RV ride, whereas, you know, you're about a 5 or 6 hour plane trip. So I hope you're not offended that we've left you out of the RV deal. But, you know, the reality is that our clients are making all kinds of changes to their retirement goals. It used to be, I want to travel to Europe with my spouse. I want to go out to dinner more often, but now things are changing. People are traveling in the country with things like RVs, and they're going on airplanes and staying in hotels less. People have gotten used in many cases to staying at home and eating. Even you shared with me, Anthony, that you've actually enjoyed the fact that over the last 5 months you've been able to eat healthier because you haven't gone out to dinner. So, I'm sure you've seen it yourself. Your clients are having some of the same reactions, and their goals are changing.
Yeah, 100%. I have taken advantage of this time period. Lost 30 or 35 pounds since COVID started. Started losing a little weight before then, but it certainly makes it easier because I'm not doing all the traveling, and that tends to be one of my weak spots. So staying at home has helped me move forward and shift my own goals. And a lot of clients have done the same thing. I've got clients that have taken advantage of this opportunity, clients that are even working out at home, clients that have eaten less and are losing weight as well. But there's the flip side. I also have clients that are actually getting a little bigger, clients that have not taken advantage of the opportunity, clients that are just really letting life happen to them. And because they're staying at home, they're watching more movies, there's less activity, they're eating more chips, and they're actually going the other direction. And
you mean like Jeff? You mean like Jeff?
Yeah, like Jeff, exactly. No, not like Jeff. Jeff looks great. But the simple fact is that my fear and what I've seen happen is that this is also translating into the financial world as well. We got a jolt with regards to the stock market, and it went down 37% in 37 days, and now it's come back. And what that's done is it's waken a lot of people up, and it's caused a lot of people to take action. It's caused a lot of people to change their paradigm and to quit being lazy. And they're actually making some moves that are going to help them in the future by shoring up their portfolios. But there are also a group of clients that are not. These are the wait and see clients that the jolt just kind of didn't do anything to them. They're sitting home on the couch watching their portfolios and not taking any action. And I think this is not the time to be lazy. This is the time to use this as a wake-up call to be more proactive, get in your portfolio, make sure that it will still accomplish your goals, and not just sit around and wait to see what happens. If you do that, I think there's probably going to be problems ahead. You're probably going to be disappointed.
Yeah, Anthony, you're exactly right. And, that's a universal problem where we always educate people on the fact that they've got to take responsibility of their money. If they don't do that, then the opposite, a bad effect can happen on their funds. But the responsibility is on them to make sure that their portfolios are current and their needs are being met. I could not agree with you more on that.
And think about it, guys, every time somebody's goal changes even slightly, their plan needs to change to achieve that goal because you've moved the target. And even if it doesn't seem like it's moved very much, the target has moved. And I think people tend to be a little too complacent in setting a plan, and they think it's like, the set it and forget it type thing. And it's really not, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like tax planning. It's a moving target. It's something that needs to be revisited every year. Portfolio values change. The amount of income changes. So it is a moving target. You absolutely must plan continuously, and I'm going to suggest even vigorously. If you're in the younger generation and you want to take advantage of this, then that's going to require one type of plan. If you're a little bit older and you can't afford to risk your money, that's going to be a different plan. So you have to plan according to where you are. There's not one silver bullet. You have to plan according to your situation and your resources and the amount of risk that you can afford to take.
Yeah, and you also have to plan to make changes when the economy changes, when the markets change. And of course, even though the markets zoom back over the last few months, the reality is that the economy is different now. And that alone means a change for people, whether you're retired or not retired. So we need to take a quick commercial break here. So stay with us, Anthony, please, for this next segment. And you stay with us too. We have a lot more coming up right here on the Income Generation. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Income Generation. Dave Scranton, my co-host, and me would like to welcome again Anthony Saccaro, all the way from Los Angeles, our good friend on the West Coast. And Anthony, you've just written a book, and I can't wait to read it, but I want you to tell me, what are the two best lessons that consumers, retirees, and pre-retirees can learn from it, because it's titled More Life Than Money, How to Not Outlive Your Savings. So tell us, Anthony, is the title true to form, or are there other lessons in there that folks need to learn?
Well, the entire gist of the book is that what you don't know can hurt you, which is opposite of what we have heard. And when I go through the book, I talk about 10 or 12 things that people don't know about different aspects of retirement that can not only hurt them, but that can actually wreck their retirement. We talk about taking Social Security at the right time. We talk about investing for the right phase of life. We even talk about how to prepare yourself for long-term care expenses that could wipe out $1 million mistake just like that. So I think the first takeaway is that you really have to know. And my goal was to help give enough information to individuals to be able to go look a little bit deeper and learn what it is they don't know. And that's, I think, the first big takeaway. The second big takeaway is I just finished a chapter about COVID because I couldn't have a financial book come out in August, which is when it was supposed to come out, and not have this chapter. So the publishers graciously allowed me to go in and write this chapter. And we talk about what I think is going to be the potential outcome of COVID. Matter of fact, the chapter is called A Foretaste of the Aftermath of COVID. And the very last couple of paragraphs about from that chapter, as far as what you can do to prepare yourself, is become more educated. We live in the world today where education is not a problem. I don't care if you're interested in it or not. Go Google these things. Take control of your money. Take the bull by the horns. No one cares about your money as much as you do. So you have to become educated in order to protect yourself and in order to reestablish what you want your money to do for you and make sure that you're on the right path. And if you just don't have the wherewithal to do that, are not going to do that, find an advisor who's willing to educate you and not dodge all your questions. Ask as many questions as you want. So I think those are the two key takeaways from my book.
And Anthony, when's this book going to become available? What's your pub date?
Yeah, so I think we're going to actually get that this week, but I'm hearing somewhere in November is when it's going to become available.
November. Gee, you're going to have to rewrite and put another chapter in based upon the election results by November. That should be quite interesting. And I know that even though you're over there on the left coast, unlike most, I know you're hoping that things stay status quo in the Oval Office for another 4 years. So we'll be praying for the same here, Jeff and I. And thanks again for being back on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
All right, the show's not over yet. You stay with us. We'll be right back in a moment here on the Income Generation. We'll be right back. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our guest, Bob Zukis, and my good friend and guest, Anthony Saccaro, as well as, of course, Jeff Small for joining me today on the Income Generation. But I also want to thank you, our new and returning viewers. You know, we all see this annoying little pop-up from time to time, and if you're like me, you probably click the Remind Me Later tab more often than not, because you know that updating software usually means you have to reboot, which is kind of a pain. So Remind Me Later is a nice option to have on a computer. But when it comes to the great reboot happening now as a result of the coronavirus, it isn't the best option for your retirement plan. As businesses, consumers, the economy, the financial markets, and society as a whole change and adapt to whatever the new normal is going to look like, it's important to make sure that your financial plan keeps pace. Are the decisions you've made around when to retire, when to collect Social Security, and your asset allocation still the right decisions given all the recent challenges and all the new uncertainty? Is your plan still aligned with your goals? Is it still capable of meeting your income needs for up to 30 years or more of retirement? Does it adequately prepare you for the impacts of inflation? Does it help protect your investments from downside risks? And of course, is it designed to help you take advantage of the new potential opportunities? I believe these are just a few of the important questions that you need to be asking yourself right now. Because if you're subconsciously waiting for this to be all over and for things to go back to normal, There are, I believe, two problems with that. One is that there's still no way of knowing when or even if this will really be all over. And number two, as we've discussed on today's show, the normal we're going back to is not the same normal that we had in the pre-pandemic world. So when it comes to helping to protect your life savings, don't wait to be reminded later, because by then, it might just be too late. Take action now. How? By revisiting, by rebooting, by restarting your financial strategy, preferably with the help of the right advisor, one who specializes in retirement income and helping you meet your individual retirement goals, regardless of market conditions. As always, stay safe and thanks for watching. If you're close to or in retirement and you're concerned about your money, it's essential that you stay informed and up to date. And as you know, right here is where you can do it on The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, and we'll see you next week.
The Income Generation is now available on YouTube. Subscribe to The Income Generation so you never miss a show. You can watch all your favorite episodes now in one place, as well as catch up with your favorite financial guests. Subscribe now to The Income Generation, only on YouTube.